Welcome to MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things magic. In today's video, we are going to add the first 20 cards to our Momir Vig Cube with a mana value of 4. What's up, MTG BC? That is the MTG Burgeoning community. Welcome back to the 4th installment of our Momir Vig Cube series. If you happen to miss what we're trying to achieve in this series, please check out the description below for MTG Burgeoning's introduction to the Momir Vig variant. Watch that video and then come back as we are going to include the first 20 creature cards with a mana value of 4. Additionally, if you want to check out the link in the description below to Cube Cobra, you can see the contents of our Momir Vig Cube. Alright, so let's begin with the first creature with a mana value of 4, and that's going to be Accomplished Alchemist. 2/5 bodies, so it's bringing the toughness. Tapping to add 1 mana of any color can be extremely valuable, particularly because we can ramp ahead of our opponents and summon creatures from the Momir Vig Cube way ahead of curve. And if we have any lifelink creatures on the battlefield, well, we can tap and add X mana of any one color, where X is the amount of life we gain this turn. So we can send those lifelinking creatures into combat, gain some life, and then when combat is over, we can tap Accomplished Alchemist to add X mana and cast a creature even bigger than just 1 mana of any color. Accomplished Alchemist is creature number 1 with a CMC of 4. Creature number 2, the Airy Worshippers, 2/4 with the Inspired mechanic. So if we are fortunate to be able to send this human cleric into combat, and it survives and we can untap, then we can pay 2 and a blue. So BC, make sure you have those islands in your basic land deck. Once we pay the 2 and a blue, we can create a 2/2 blue bird enchantment creature token with flying. This mechanic, boy, this could be inordinately valuable if we can pull it off a couple of times in a game, because we can only cast 1 creature spell per turn because it's Momir Vig. Having any additional creatures on the battlefield under our control could only benefit us in the numbers game. And plus, with a 4 toughness, it seems reasonable that we could send her into combat and she may survive. So Airy Worshippers is creature number 2. Number 3, and boy do we have much to discuss with this creature. Creature number 3 from the 4 CMC slot, Arixmethes, Slumbering Isle. Not tide. I'm sure it could create some tides, but right now it's just going to be an isle. It's going to enter the battlefield tapped with 5 slumber counters on it. And yes, it is a 12/12. However, as long as it has a slumber counter on it, it's still a land. Whenever we cast a spell, we may remove a slumber counter from Arixmethes. So over the course of a game, it'll take us 5 turns by casting 5 creature spells, 1 per turn, in order to make Arixmethes a 12/12 creature. That means that by turn 9, we'll have a 12/12. That may not be quick enough. However, if we look at the very bottom, we can also tap Arixmethes for a green and a blue mana. For me, for the purposes of ramping up, similar to what we talked about with Accomplished Alchemist, being able to untap on turn 5, play your land, and then summon a creature with those 5 lands and Arixmethes with a CMC of 7, that really puts us ahead of curve and may be valuable enough to just outright win the game. So investing 4 on a quote-unquote land that taps for 2 mana, that may be game winning. So Arixmethes is a very interesting card to add to this deck because of its versatility and just how many different things you could potentially do with it. Next up, we have Archangel of Tithes. I believe that this may be one of the best creatures, not just at the 4 spot, but in the entire cube, particularly because of the way in which you play Momir Vig. Players are going to tap out every turn so that they can summon the biggest creature possible from the cube. And if they do so, then they have no mana to pay any of the taxes that Archangel of Tides forces you to do. And when she's untapped, you cannot attack. Opponents cannot attack us if Archangel of Tides is untapped unless they pay 1 for each of those creatures. If they're investing all of their mana into summoning the creatures, they have no mana to pay the tax for Archangel of Tides. Additionally, whenever she attacks, creatures can't block her unless their controller pays 1 for each of those creatures. Again, if they don't have the mana to pay to be able to block her, then Archangel of Tides is going to swing in for what we can only assume to be unblockable combat damage, or we just hold her back defensively, making sure that our opponents cannot attack unless they keep those precious, precious lands untapped for combat. All right, creature number 5, we have Aurelia, Exemplar of Justice. It's a 2/5 flyer with the Mentor mechanic, which means whenever she attacks, we're going to put a +1/+1 counter on target creature with lesser power. At the beginning of combat on our turn, choose up to 1 target creature we control. Until end of turn, that creature gets +2/+0. It gains Trample if it's red, and gains Vigilance if it's white. So more often than not, I can't imagine us not selecting Aurelia for each of those abilities. Sending a 4/5 Vigilant, Trampling, flying creature into combat while also slapping a +1/+1 counter on another creature that's attacking, that just seems inordinately valuable. Aurelia can come down on turn 4 and really take control of the game. All right, creature number 6, we have the Aven Smokeweaver, 2/3 flying, protection from red. There are going to be protection creatures throughout this cube, and this is just an example of one of them. If it's going to block a red creature, it's going to not take any damage. If it's trying to be blocked by a red creature, it's just going to fly right past them. Creature number 7, we have the Azorius Justiciar. Justiciar? The Azorius Justiciar. It's a 2/2, so it's not very impressive for a mana value of 4. However, when it ETBs, we detain 2 target creatures our opponents control. So this mechanic, going all the way back to Return to Ravnica, to detain something, those creatures can't attack or block, and their activated abilities can't be activated until our next turn. In a format like Momir Vig, where combat is key, detaining 2 creatures that our opponents control, or one opponent controls, that could be devastating. So Azorius Justiciar could really come down and really take out an opponent. It could just be devastating, particularly if we're having a multiplayer format like we're trying to achieve here. Having both of those creatures not be able to attack, block, or activate their abilities, that means that each other player is going to see that weakness, and that opponent is probably going to be out of the game. All right, creature number 8. Baird, Steward of Argive. So a lot of what we said with Archangel of Tides is going to apply to Baird. It's a 2/4 with Vigilance, and creatures can't attack us unless their controller pays 1 for each of those creatures. Again, our opponents are going to have to hold back casting the biggest possible creature spells they can just for the possibility of attacking us successfully. Baird will make it very difficult and prompt our opponents with some tough decision making. All right, next creature up, this is creature number 9, and we have Balduvian Horde. Balduvian Horde is a 5/5, and when it ETBs, we sacrifice it unless we discard a card at random from our hand. As you'll see as we continue with the series, not every creature in the cube is going to be inordinately helpful. Although Balduvian Horde does come in with a beefy 5/5 body, it does not have evasion and is going to cost you one of the lands out of your hand, if you so choose to keep it on the battlefield, of course. All right, creature 10, as we hit the halfway point of this video. Oh, baby, we've got the Beast Whisperer. 2/3, whenever we cast a creature spell, draw a card. Because we have to discard a card each time we summon a creature from the cube in Momir Vig, being able to replace that discarded land with another land from our library by activating Beast Whisperer's triggered ability here, Oh baby, that could be game ending if you really think about it, because we are always not having to worry about paying that tax because it always pays itself back because of Beast Whisperer. That could really put us so far ahead of our opponents that the game may be out of reach by the time they can do anything about it. All right, the second half of our creatures begin, and we're going to start with Blood Fray Giant. It's a 4/3 trampler. It has the Unleash mechanic way back at the time of Return to Ravnica. And Unleash reads, we may have this creature enter with a +1/+1 counter on it, but it can't block if it has that +1/+1 counter on it. So this is probably more dependent on game and board state. If we feel like we are ahead of our opponents, then slapping a +1/+1 counter on Blood Fray Giant, that may be okay. A 5/4 trampler that can't block for 4, yeah, that could work. All right, Blood Fray Giant is number 11. Number 12, we have Bog Wraith. It is a 3/3 creature with Swamp Walk. Yes, we have many, many landwalk abilities in this deck. Although it is so beneficial to include all 5 colors in your basic land deck, there are going to be some detriments as well. And Bog Wraith is one of them, because if you have a swamp, you are not blocking this Wraith. All right, creature number 13. Baird's Cabal Minion. 2/2. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player sacrifices an artifact, creature, or land. So, like I said, not all creatures are inordinately valuable. That's one take on it. Another take could be Braids comes down, and then each of our opponents end up sacrificing one of their creatures or one of their lands. It gets back to our upkeep, and we just simply sacrifice Braids. At a minimum, we thinned out our opponent's board states and just lost a 2/2 that was just an investment of 4 mana. Again, that will be more dependent on board state and game state, but Braids is going to add a very interesting dynamic to the Momir Vig Cube. All right, number 14, we have the Bronzeback Moa. 2/2, and whenever another creature enters a battlefield under our control, it gets +3/+3 till end of turn. So minimally, we can send this as a 5/5 into combat as long as we summon a creature from the cube before we attack. 5/5 for an investment of 4 each turn. Not terrible. Not terrible at all. All right, next up, the 3/4 mark we are about to hit, and we're going to hit it with this mythic rare, Brutal Horde Chief. 3/3, whenever a creature we control attacks, defending player loses 1 life and we gain 1 life. That could be very, very valuable towards the end of a game, particularly if there are some opponents that are very low on the life total. The creatures don't even have to survive combat. They can just go into combat, trigger the life loss, and if it ends up killing the opponents, the creatures are left untouched because the opponent's life total is 0 or less. As a bonus, we can tap 3 and any combination of 2 Boros mana, and creatures our opponents control block this turn if able, and we choose how those creatures block. So this is like a Master Warcraft ability. Just make sure, MTGBC, that you're playing with those red and white lands in that basic land deck. All right, next up we have the Burning Tree Bloodscale. It's a 2/2 with Bloodthirst 1, which means if an opponent was dealt damage this turn, Burning Tree Bloodscale will enter the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it. It seems unlikely that we would end up attacking prior to casting a creature from the Momir Vig Cube. It's possible. It's all about strategy. You could always choose to cast that after combat. So it is possible that we can utilize the Bloodthirst ability. As a bonus, we can tap 2 in a red and target creature can't block Burning Tree Bloodscale this turn. Or we can tap 2 in a green and target creature must block Burning Tree Bloodscale this turn. So make sure you have those mountains and forests in the basic land card deck. All right, we're down to our last 4 creatures, and the next one is Captivating Crew. 4/3 human pirate, 3 in a red. Gain control of target creature and opponent controls until the end of turn. Untap it, it gains haste. Activate the ability only anytime you could cast a sorcery. So this is definitely main phase activating. However, for 3 in a red, again, MTG BC, make sure you have those mountains in the basic land card deck. And once we do, we can gain control of that creature, and we can do whatever we want with it. If we have a sacrifice ability, it's gone. We can attack another opponent with it. If it gets late enough into the game and we have at least 2 red mana sources, we can activate this twice. Captivating Crew is going to come down and do what red does best. Make chaos. Next up, we have creature number 18 from the CMC 4 spot, and it's Cephalid Retainer. It's a 2/3 with no other evasion abilities or anything like that. However, we can tap 2 blue and we can tap target creature without flying. With enough islands on the battlefield under your control, if you have Cephalid Retainer, you could really control the board state by, prior to combat, tapping down some creatures that might be problematic, or end of turn, tapping some creatures without flying to send in our biggins, making sure that the combat math works in our favor. Just make sure that you have those islands in the basic land card deck. All right. Creature number 19 is the Chameleon Colossus, a 4/4 changeling, which means it's every creature type at all times. It has protection from black, like we were talking about earlier. There are protection creatures all over the place in this Momir Vig Cube. 2 and 2 green, Chameleon Colossus gets +X/+X till end of turn, where X is its power. So again, if we're fortunate enough to have 2 forests on the battlefield under our control, we can make Chameleon Colossus at its minimum an 8/8. If we're fortunate enough and it's late enough in the game to have 4 forests, well, now we're looking at a 16/16. And that protection from black, that's going to be a lot more beneficial than not having it. Chameleon Colossus is creature number 19 from the CMC 4 spot, which means we are down to our last creature card of this video. And creature number 20 from the CMC 4 spot, oh baby, it's a big one. Cherax, the Raging Isle. It is a legendary Leviathan crab, 0/17 as its body. 0/17, so at 17 toughness, it's blocking for days. That's blocking for years, let's be honest. Any spells, well, not really, that our opponents cast that target Cherax cost 2 more to cast. So there are no instants or sorceries in this cube, so we really don't have to worry about that. So we can tap 3, and Cherax gets +X/-X till end of turn, where X is the number of islands we control. So if we have enough islands on the battlefield under our control from our basic land deck, then we could activate this a couple of times and really start to turn the tide of combat. Let's say, for example, we have 6 total lands on the battlefield, and let's say 3 of them are islands. We can send Cherax into play, and we can send Cherax into combat. It's already in play. We send Cherax into combat, and we can activate its ability not once, but twice, giving it +6/-6 till end of turn, and suddenly we're sending a 6/11 into combat. That's only going to be a matter of time until our opponents are just going to succumb to the mightiness of this Leviathan crab. Just make sure, MTGBC, you've got those islands in the basic land deck. And there we have it. Our 4th installment of the Momir Vig Cube has come to an end. We have included the first 20 creatures with a converted mana cost of 4. Next up, CMC 5. This is MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things Magic.